Hello everyone, my name is Danielle. Welcome to my channel. I'm a writer, a reader, a student, and today we are going to be talking about the reader part. This video comes before the other video. So classics. They have this intimidating aura surrounding them. They sound like old English. The sentences are long and flowery, and for some reason, people are fainting every 5 minutes. I get it. It's weird, but classics don't have to be scary. Unless you're reading Edgar Allan Poe, then it has to be scary. But aside from that, unless you're reading Lovecraft, some are actually hilarious and fun. Today I will be recommending some actually approachable classics. The ones that make you realize, oh, this isn't that bad, and I understand why this is so popular today. Now, caveat, a lot of my English education, my English literature education is very white, as you would expect. I go to school in America, and a lot of these books are English literature because I fuck with English literature. Well, I can't swear on the first minute. I get along with English literature the best. Personally, that's my favorite. Not to say that there's something wrong with international literature, it's just that I think that it requires a lot of more historical context than what we have in America or in the Western world as of right now. Like, you can't read Journey to the West, which is a Chinese work of classic literature. It's like, I think 4 times as long as Mahabharata. I will double check that. It's a long book, and you can't read that unless you have background knowledge of Buddhism. However, most people in the Western world aren't Buddhists. They come from a Christian background, which is a lot of English literature, which is where I come from. That is why a lot of these books are going to be English literature. If you have something to say about it, you can. I am trying to read more diverse works of literature. However, I am strapped for time when it comes to my own reading. However, I will get there eventually. I will encourage you to do the same. However, as of right now, when you're just starting, I don't think that you should be I don't think that it's necessarily productive to be focused on reading diverse works of literature. I think you should just read what you want to read. I need to be on the side so that the book can be right here. So the first book that I'm going to recommend is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Now, I have read this book far too many times. This has been part of my required curriculum at least 4 times, so that means I have read this book at least 4 times, if not more. I read it twice in high school, twice in community college, and then once in 4 years, so that's 5. No one person needs to read Pride and Prejudice 5 times. However, I think you should read it once. Pride and Prejudice follows Elizabeth Bennet, who lives in Regency era England, and she is on the marriage market trying to find a suitable match for her. And it follows her troubles as she tries to find this match, and she runs into the rude and arrogant Mr. Darcy. A lot of people credit this book to be like the original Enemies to Lovers, which it is not. It's not the original Enemies to Lovers. However, it is an Enemies to Lovers book, and also if you do love things like Bridgerton or other Regency era shows, I encourage you to give this book a try. It's popular for a reason, because it does portray a lot of Regency era politics, which I think is incredibly interesting once you're talking about what is popular during this time. So I feel like it's obvious that I need to recommend some Shakespeare. I have actually never taken a Shakespeare class. However, I have read Shakespeare for high school and just for fun. One of my favorite Shakespeare is, which is not problematic. I don't think it is. I hope not. There's a reason I'm not recommending The Merchant of Venice. But I will recommend A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is, how do I even start to describe that book? It is a story about a love triangle gone wrong. And there's fairies involved, and there's butt jokes in that book as well. It's very funny. It's kind of raunchy, honestly, A Midsummer Night's Dream. You can read this book, although if you are going to read a play, I always recommend watching it. Sometimes you can't go to a physical play and watch it. I don't expect you to. But you can watch a movie of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I think that plays are meant to be experienced as performed. So once you are watching the experience, you can really understand it, especially for Shakespeare, which is really hard to understand. The old modern English is very difficult for modern English readers to understand and get. So I think that seeing it performed really helps. Number 3 is The Miller's Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer. Or Geoffrey? How the fuck do you say his name? Geoffrey Chaucer? Geoffrey Chaucer? It's by Chaucer. The Miller's Tale is about a man who gets cucked and tries to get his revenge. I think that this book, it's like a short book. It's like 40 pages, I think. So it's not that long. It's like more like a short story, a longer short story. If you don't know, The Miller's Tale is a part of a longer book called The Canterbury Tales. So The Miller's Tale is like a short story in that tale. It's very comedic, it's very funny, and the punchline really does punch you in the face. I will say though that it is written in Middle English, So if you want to read a translation, I won't get mad at you for it, especially if you're reading it just for leisure. I think that if you're reading it for leisure, you don't need to read it in the Middle English. I had to read it in Middle English. I took that L. But I can hear you laughing. You saw me struggle with having to read Chaucer, unfortunately.
Heard that name a lot.
Stupid Chaucer. He's a good author, but he controlled my life for a semester. Number 4 requires some preamble. I do not know much about Epic the Musical. I have heard some songs passing by on TikTok. However, if you are interested in the musical, which I know a lot of people are, I recommend that you read the original source material, which is the Odyssey by Homer. Now, the Odyssey, I think, is, of course, like any other epic, it is steeped in historical context and literary context that is necessary for the time. However, I do think that it is possible to read that book at a surface level and still enjoy it, especially when you already have the context of, say, Epic the Musical or other mythologies by Percy Jackson, etc., etc. Once you already have that background knowledge of these myths and you're reading it and you're like, oh, that's where that comes from. It's incredibly satisfying. So, do I really need to describe the Odyssey? You know what the Odyssey is at this point. It's a story about Odysseus after the Trojan War trying to get home. I think the trip on Google Maps takes like about a day and a half, but it takes him like 10 years in order for him to make that trek. I do not envy Odysseus by any means. What's my favorite thing about Odysseus? I like the climax. My favorite thing about Odysseus was being able to see Odysseus's personality in the books. I think that with other Greek or Roman heroes, we see like Hercules or Achilles, who is very strong, very buff. It was very nice surprising even, to see a character that is so cunning and clever as Odysseus. And he's known as like Sly Odysseus, Cunning Odysseus. That's like one of his like epithets. And Athena really likes him because of that. So yeah, that was my favorite thing about Odysseus. And we had a lot of discussions in class whether we liked Odysseus or not, and it seemed like the class was very well divided in half, that half of the class hated Odysseus and the other half liked Odysseus. I took a lukewarm stance to him. I was in the middle. I could understand that. I could appreciate him, but I could also recognize that he was an asshole at times. I don't think that's too political to say, but it was nice to read the Odyssey by Homer in a way that was approachable, and I do think that the book is one of the more approachable epics, especially if you already have passing background knowledge on Greco-Roman mythology, whether that be from reading other epics or even from Epic the Musical or Percy Jackson. Number 5, I had to wrestle whether I was going to recommend The Picture of Dorian Gray or Frankenstein, because I didn't want this video to be 10 years long, nor did I want to recommend only Victorian literature, because Victorian literature is my favorite, specifically Victorian horror, but I settled on Frankenstein by Mary Shelley instead of Picture of Dorian Gray. I think we can pat myself. I chose young female writer as opposed to that twink. Was he a twink? I feel like Oscar Wilde just gives twink vibes, but let me see for myself. Yeah, I just googled him. I just looked at what he looks like. Yeah, I see it. I was right. So, anyway, back to Frankenstein. Either way, Halloween has just passed, and you already know the story of Frankenstein. A story about a doctor, quote unquote, because he's not a literal doctor in the book. About our version of Frankenstein, modern Frankenstein, is a doctor who brings to life a monster and he's unable to control it. Frankenstein is notable because it is, one, written by like a teenage girl. I think she was 19 at the time or 17. Bonkers, crazy, and it is the first sci-fi novel. What? You're telling me a teenage girl did that? Anyway, I really love this book because I think that you can enjoy it on the surface level. What is funny is that Victor Frankenstein, the student, the doctor, quote unquote doctor, he's not a literal doctor, but everyone calls him Dr. Frankenstein now. Same way that the creature, everyone calls the creature Frankenstein, even though the creature doesn't have a name. Anyway, that's pedantic. But the fact that Victor Frankenstein, is such an unlikable character, I think makes it really interesting. He's not a moral person, he's not a good person. So it is interesting to see it from his perspective. But I think that you can enjoy I do like Frankenstein for the themes of like what it means to be a human, what it means to have a creator. Can the creator ever be moral when you create something with the concept of good and evil, etc., and how that relates to Christianity. I do think that it is interesting. However, you can still enjoy it on a surface level, and I think that's what makes Frankenstein so popular today. And it's a pretty short book. You can read it in like a few sittings, I think. Number 6 is going to be a book that I do have on the shelf. Be right back. So I actually do have a copy of this book, at least, and the reason why I bring this up is because in Frankenstein, the creature reads the book that I'm holding right now, and it is Paradise Lost by John Milton. Don't look at my cover. My cover got waterboarded. There was a nasty battle with a water bottle in my backpack, and my book lost. But the back of the cover still looks beautiful. This is the Barnes & Noble cloth cover edition thing that they have. If you don't know about Paradise Lost, it is a story about Lucifer, the devil, who gets casted out of heaven and follows his journey into trying to corrupt humanity. We obviously demonize the devil. We know he's not a good person. However, Paradise Lost really makes you sympathize for him because it's written from Lucifer's point of view, I believe, in poem. I think that Lucifer in the book would be a drag king or a drag queen. He has a sense of dramatis, which is very enjoyable and fun to read. And of course, you can read Paradise Lost with the, like I said, the analyzing the major themes of the book, looking for literary context and historical context of the book. However, I do think that you can still read it and sympathize with the devil. In addition to, I think that it is really good for people who are interested in seeing another demonized point of view, because it's literally written from the point of view of the devil. And I think that is incredibly interesting to see the War of the Angels narrated by the loser's side. Because in the Bible, we get the winner's side, obviously. Number 7, the last one. Number 7 is going to be The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. This was my Oscar Wilde nomination. I've read this 3 times, I believe. And each time, I still enjoy it like the last. It's a very funny play. Like I said, for plays, I encourage you to watch like YouTube videos or movies of it. There are many plots interweaving with the importance of being earnest. However, I will say this. It follows the story of Jack, who is going by the name Ernest in his life, and he is proposing to Gwendolyn. Upon proposing, Gwendolyn says, "Oh, I would love to marry a man named Ernest. I can marry no one else but named Ernest." Meanwhile, Ernest / Jack, whose real name is Jack, is like, "Oh shoot, she doesn't know my real name." And he says, "What about Jack?" And Gwendolyn is like, "That is a horrible name. I could never marry a man named Jack." And it follows the nonsense that happens as this Ernest / Jack tries to change his name. The book follows 2 men who lead double lives, and it is very funny seeing them grapple with it. I think the funniest part was just seeing how ludicrous, like, everything is turned up to 100 when it comes to Victorian manners and like etiquette, that they're like, it's written in like a satirical way where they're making fun of it, not in like bad satire where like, I offended you and it's satire, but like actual satire. I really love The Importance of Being Earnest. I think that it is a very funny play, and I encourage you all to watch it at your leisure. So for my TBR, I have a couple books. I do have more, obviously, however, I am limiting it. These books I am trying to read more diversely when it comes to classical literature. So the first one is going to be The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, or La Casa en Mango Street. I don't know if I will read it in English or Spanish. I'll probably read it in Spanish because it feels right to read it in the original language it was written in. I don't know what it's about, so I cannot tell you. I assume that it's giving I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. The next book I want to read is a Filipino book. It is No Le Me Tangere. I don't know. Don't Touch Me by Jose Rizal. Don't Touch Me is a Latin saying, and I know that the book is critiquing Spanish colonial rule because this was written when Spain was in control of the Philippines, and Jose Rizal was a bit of a ladies' man and a bit of a nerd as well, which I appreciate. I think there's like romance involved. There's a love triangle, I think. Don't quote me on it though. Anyway, I do want to read this book very badly. Okay, I'm gonna go in the middle again. That is my classic starter pack, and that is meant to prove that classics don't have to be boring or hard to understand. They can be fun and interesting. If you've read The House on Mango Street or Don't Touch Me by Jose Rizal, let me know if you enjoyed it or not. I want to read those books. If you recommend it, I'd be interested. Next week, I will be posting a video on how to read classics for leisure, specifically. So please subscribe down below if you want to read that. If it is already up, I will put it on the iCard or put it on screen for you to click at the end of this video. In addition to, let me know if there are any classics that you are intimidated by. I want to read Journey to the West. I tried reading it. I picked it up a couple times and never finished it because that book is so long. Journey to the West is one that I am afraid of. What are you afraid of when it comes to classic literature? Let me know. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me today, and don't forget to subscribe, please. I'm trying to post new videos every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe down below. And yeah, I'll see you again next week. Bye!